What happens when two of the most influential women in media collide in a way that nobody saw coming? What happens when a carefully orchestrated interview spirals completely out of control, leaving one guest storming off set and the other questioning everything she thought she knew about her own show? Today, we're diving into the explosive confrontation that had everyone talking. The heated exchange that changed everything. And the moment when Meghan Markle found herself face to face with questions she never expected to answer. Make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think really happened here, because this story has layers that go deeper than anyone realized. The studio lights were blazing as Oprah settled into her signature interviewing position. That familiar warm smile spreading across her face as she prepared for what was supposed to be another heartfelt conversation. Across from her sat Meghan Markle, poised and elegant in a cream-colored dress that seemed to catch the light just right. Her hands folded neatly in her lap as she waited for the cameras to roll. "Meghan, thank you so much for being here with us today," Oprah began, her voice carrying that trademark blend of warmth and authority that had made her America's most trusted interviewer. "I know this conversation has been a long time coming." Meghan smiled, though there was something slightly guarded in her expression. "Thank you for having me, Oprah. I've always admired your work. Your ability to create space for people to tell their truth. Well, that's exactly what we're here for today," Oprah replied, leaning forward slightly. "I want to talk about your journey, your experiences, and I want to give you the platform to share your story in your own words." The conversation began smoothly enough, with Meghan discussing her transition from actress to royal life, the challenges of adapting to a completely different world, and the pressures that came with such intense public scrutiny. Oprah nodded along, asking follow-up questions with her usual skill, creating what seemed like a safe space for honest dialogue. "The thing people don't understand," Meghan said, her voice growing more animated, "is that when you're thrust into that level of attention, every single move you make is analyzed, dissected, criticized. There's no room for being human, for making mistakes, for learning as you go." "That sounds incredibly isolating," Oprah responded, her brow furrowing with apparent concern. "How did you cope with that level of pressure?" "You find your voice," Meghan said firmly. "You realize that staying silent isn't protecting anyone. It's just perpetuating systems that need to be challenged. Sometimes speaking up is the only way to create real change." It was at this moment that Oprah's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. She glanced down at her notes, then back up at Meghan with a look that seemed to carry more weight than before. "Speaking of speaking up," Oprah said slowly, "I want to address something that's been brought to my attention. There have been some concerns raised about inconsistencies in previous statements you've made publicly." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Meghan's posture straightened and her smile became more fixed. "I'm not sure what you mean by inconsistencies, Oprah." "Well, for instance," Oprah continued, her voice maintaining its professional tone but with an underlying firmness. "You've spoken about feeling unsupported by the institution, but there are documented instances of support that were offered and declined. Can you help us understand that discrepancy?" Meghan's eyes flashed, and for a moment, the careful composure she'd maintained began to crack. "I think there's been a misunderstanding about what constitutes real support versus performative gestures designed to make an institution look good." "But Meghan," Oprah pressed, "when we talk about truth, we have to be willing to examine all aspects of a situation. I've built my career on honest dialogue, and that means asking difficult questions when they need to be asked." The tension in the studio was becoming palpable. Crew members exchanged glances, and even the usually unflappable production team seemed to sense that something was shifting in a way they hadn't anticipated. "I came here because I trusted you," Meghan said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "I thought this was going to be a conversation where I could share my experience without being interrogated like I'm on trial." "This isn't an interrogation," Oprah replied, her own voice becoming more measured. "This is journalism, and journalism means asking the questions that need to be asked, even when they're uncomfortable." "Journalism," Meghan repeated, her eyebrows rising. "Is that what we're calling this? Because it feels an awful lot like you're trying to discredit me using talking points that sound suspiciously like they came from the same people who've been trying to silence me for years." The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Oprah's expression hardened, and for the first time in the interview, her famous composure seemed to waver. "Meghan, I need you to be very careful about what you're implying," Oprah said, her voice carrying a warning tone that few guests had ever heard. I have spent decades building my reputation on integrity and independence. I don't take marching orders from anyone. Then why does it feel like you're reading from their script? Meghan shot back, her voice rising slightly. Why does it feel like you brought me here under false pretenses? The confrontation was escalating rapidly, with both women now fully engaged in what was becoming less of an interview and more of a battle of wills. The careful choreography of a typical Oprah interview was dissolving into something raw and unpredictable. You want to talk about false pretenses, Oprah said, her voice taking on a steel quality that few people had ever witnessed. Let's talk about the responsibility that comes with the platform you've been given. Let's talk about the impact of words when they're broadcast to millions of people. Don't lecture me about responsibility, Meghan replied, her own voice now matching intensity. I've lived with the consequences of speaking truth to power in ways you can't imagine. The studio fell silent except for the hum of equipment and the barely audible whispers of crew members who couldn't believe what they were witnessing. This was not the carefully managed, emotionally resonant interview that everyone had expected. Oprah leaned back in her chair, her eyes never leaving Meghan's face. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, ready to snap. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter but carried more weight than before. I think we need to take a step back here, because what's happening right now is exactly what I was afraid might happen. What you were afraid might happen? Meghan's voice was incredulous. You invited me here, Oprah. You reached out to me. I did, Oprah acknowledged, nodding slowly. And I did it because I believed in giving you a platform to tell your story. But telling your story and avoiding accountability are two very different things. Meghan's hands, which had been folded in her lap, were now gripping the arms of her chair. Accountability to who? To the same institution that tried to erase me. To the same media that twisted every word I said. To the truth, Oprah said simply. To the millions of people who listened to your words and believed them. To the other women who looked up to you and saw you as a voice for change. I am a voice for change, Meghan shot back. That's exactly why they're trying to tear me down, and apparently you're helping them do it. Oprah's expression darkened. Nobody is trying to tear you down, Meghan. But when you make claims that affect other people's lives, when you paint pictures that may not be complete, that's not activism. That's something else entirely. So now you're questioning my activism. Meghan's voice rose another notch. You're questioning my commitment to social justice. I'm questioning your commitment to accuracy, Oprah replied, her voice steady but firm. There's a difference between fighting for justice and fighting for your own narrative. The words hit like a physical blow. Meghan's face flushed, and for a moment, she seemed genuinely speechless. When she found her voice again, it was tight with anger. How dare you? How dare you sit there and question my integrity when you know nothing about what I've been through? I know what you've told me you've been through, Oprah corrected. But I also know that every story has multiple sides, and my job is to help people understand all of them. Your job, Meghan said, her voice dripping with disdain, used to be about lifting people up, about giving voice to the voiceless. When did you become another person trying to silence women who dare to speak out? The accusation clearly stung. Oprah's jaw tightened, and when she spoke, there was a new edge to her voice. Don't you dare question my commitment to women's voices. I've spent my entire career creating space for women to be heard. But being heard doesn't mean being believed without question. It doesn't mean being immune from scrutiny. Scrutiny, Meghan laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what we're calling character assassination now? We're calling it journalism, Oprah replied. And if you can't handle questions about your own statements, then maybe you're not ready for the platform you're asking for. The challenge hung in the air between them. Meghan's eyes flashed dangerously, and she leaned forward in her chair. You think I can't handle questions? You think I'm not ready for this platform? Let me tell you something, Oprah. I've been handling questions my entire life. Questions about my race, my background, my worthiness. I've been handling them from people who had no right to ask them. And now you're handling them from someone who does have the right to ask them, Oprah countered. Because that's what this is, Meghan. This is what real accountability looks like. Real accountability. Meghan's voice was now fully raised. Real accountability would be asking the right questions to the right people. Real accountability would be challenging the systems that created this situation in the first place. I have challenged those systems, Oprah said, her own voice rising to match. I've spent decades challenging them, but I've also learned that you can't fight injustice with more injustice. You can't fight lies with more lies. The word lies seemed to electrify the air. Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Lies, she said, her voice now trembling with rage. You're calling me a liar. I'm calling you someone who seems to have a very selective relationship with the truth. Oprah replied, remaining seated but her posture rigid. And that's not the same thing, but it's close enough to be concerning. I cannot believe this, Meghan said, pacing now behind her chair. I cannot believe that you, of all people, would do this to me. I trusted you. I opened up to you, and I appreciate that trust, Oprah said. But trust is a two-way street, Meghan. And when you sit in that chair and make claims that affect real people's lives, you have to be prepared to defend those claims. I shouldn't have to defend my truth to you, Meghan said, stopping her pacing to face Oprah directly. My truth is my truth. Your truth is your truth, Oprah agreed. But the truth, the actual truth, is something bigger than any of us. And my responsibility is to that truth, not to making you comfortable. Making me comfortable. Meghan's voice cracked slightly. You think this is about comfort? You think any of this has been comfortable for me? I think, Oprah said slowly, that you've become so focused on your own pain that you've lost sight of the pain you might be causing others. The words seemed to hit Meghan like a physical blow. She staggered slightly, her hand reaching out to steady herself against the back of her chair. That's not fair, she whispered. That's not fair, and you know it. Fair. Oprah's voice was softer now, but no less firm. Was it fair to the people whose lives were affected by your statements? Was it fair to the family members who couldn't defend themselves? Was it fair to the institution that, whatever its flaws, tried to support you? They didn't try to support me, Meghan said, her voice growing stronger again. They tried to control me. There's a difference, maybe, Oprah acknowledged, but maybe there's also a difference between control and guidance. Maybe there's a difference between restriction and protection. Protection. Meghan's voice was incredulous again. Protection from what? From being myself. From speaking my mind. From standing up for what I believe in. Protection from this, Oprah said, gesturing at the space between them. Protection from the consequences of speaking without thinking. Protection from the responsibility that comes with influence. Meghan stared at her for a long moment, her chest rising and falling with rapid breaths. When she spoke again, her voice was cold and controlled. I think we're done here, Oprah. I think this conversation has gone far enough. I think you're right, Oprah replied. But she made no move to end the interview. But before we finish, I want to ask you one more question. I don't think I want to answer any more of your questions, Meghan said. But she didn't move toward the exit. This isn't about what you want, Oprah said quietly. This is about what millions of people deserve to know. The tension in the studio was suffocating. Meghan remained standing, her body language screaming that she was ready to leave. But something in Oprah's tone made her pause. The silence stretched between them like a chasm that neither seemed willing to cross first. What question? Meghan finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question that everyone wants answered, but nobody has been brave enough to ask, Oprah said, her eyes never leaving Meghan's face. The question that goes to the heart of everything we've been discussing. Meghan's jaw tightened. And what question is that? Do you ever wonder, Oprah said slowly, if your need to be right is more important to you than being honest? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Meghan's face went through a series of expressions. Shock, anger, hurt, and finally something that looked almost like recognition. How can you ask me that? She said, her voice trembling. How can you sit there and question my honesty when you know what I've been through? Because what you've been through doesn't give you a free pass to reshape reality, Oprah replied, her voice gentle but unyielding. Pain doesn't justify everything, Meghan. Hurt doesn't excuse harm. I haven't harmed anyone, Meghan said. But her voice lacked conviction. I've only told my truth, your truth, Oprah repeated. But what about their truth? What about the truth of the people who tried to help you? What about the truth of the family members who couldn't speak for themselves? They had their chance to speak, Meghan shot back. They chose silence. Did they choose it, or was it chosen for them? Oprah asked. And more importantly, does their silence give you the right to fill in the blanks with your own assumptions? Meghan's composure was cracking visibly now. Her hands were shaking and her voice when she spoke was raw with emotion. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I can't believe you're making me the villain in my own story. I'm not making you anything, Oprah said softly. I'm just asking you to consider that maybe, just maybe, you're not the only person in this story who deserves compassion. Of course I'm not, Meghan said. But there was desperation in her voice. Now, I never said I was, didn't you? Oprah asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you've painted yourself as the sole victim in a situation that was probably much more complicated than that. It wasn't complicated, Meghan insisted. It was clear. They were against me from the beginning. All of them. Oprah pressed every single person. Or is it possible that some of them were trying to help you navigate a system that was unfamiliar to you? They weren't trying to help me, Meghan said, but her voice was weaker now. They were trying to change me. Maybe, Oprah acknowledged. Or maybe they were trying to prepare you for a role that comes with responsibilities you weren't ready for. I was ready, Meghan said. But the protest sounded hollow, even to her own ears. Were you? Oprah asked gently. Because being ready means being willing to listen. It means being willing to learn. It means being willing to admit when you might be wrong. I'm not wrong, Meghan said. But there was no fire left in her voice about everything, Oprah asked. About every single detail of every single interaction, about every motivation of every single person involved. Meghan stared at her, and for the first time in the interview, she seemed truly speechless. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of unspoken truths and uncomfortable realizations. I think, Meghan said finally, her voice barely audible. That you've made your point. My point, Oprah said quietly, is that truth is bigger than any of us. It's bigger than your pain, bigger than their mistakes, bigger than the narrative any of us want to tell. And what am I supposed to do with that? Meghan asked, her voice breaking slightly. What am I supposed to do with the fact that my truth might not be the whole truth? You're supposed to grow from it, Oprah replied. You're supposed to learn from it. You're supposed to become someone who can hold complexity without needing to make everyone else wrong. Meghan closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them, there was something different in her expression, something that looked almost like vulnerability. I can't do this anymore, she said quietly. I can't sit here and have you dissect every word I've ever spoken, every feeling I've ever had. Then don't, Oprah said simply. But understand that walking away from this conversation doesn't make the questions go away. It just makes them louder. Maybe that's a risk I'm willing to take, Meghan said. But she still hadn't moved toward the exit. Is it? Oprah asked. Because the Meghan I thought I knew, the one who fought for justice and equality, that woman wouldn't run from hard questions. She would face them head on. The Meghan you thought you knew was naive, Meghan replied, her voice hardening again. She believed that people would listen to her truth and believe it. She believed that doing the right thing would be enough. And now Oprah asked. Now I know better, Meghan said, her voice cold. Now, I know that everyone has an agenda, including you. My agenda, Oprah said, her voice rising slightly, is the truth. It's always been the truth. And if you can't handle that, then maybe you're not ready for the platform you're asking for. I'm not asking for anything from you, Meghan said, her voice sharp again. I don't need your platform. I don't need your approval. I don't need your version of the truth. Then why are you still here? Oprah asked quietly. The question seemed to catch Meghan off guard. She looked around the studio at the cameras at the crew members who had been watching this entire exchange with growing discomfort. I don't know, she admitted, her voice small. Think you do know, Oprah said gently. I think you know because part of you recognizes that this conversation, as difficult as it is necessary. Necessary for who? Meghan asked. For everyone, Oprah replied. For you, for the people affected by your words, for the millions of people who listened to your story and believed it without question. And what if I don't want to have this conversation? Meghan asked. What if I just want to leave? Then you leave, Oprah said simply. But you leave knowing that you had the chance to set the record straight, to show real accountability, to demonstrate real growth, and you chose not to take it. Meghan stared at her for a long moment, her face cycling through emotions too complex to name. Finally, she reached down and unclipped her microphone, the small device falling to the floor with a soft thud. "I'm done," she said, her voice final. "I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with this interview, and I'm done with you," Meghan Oprah called out as she began walking toward the exit. "This doesn't have to end like this." Meghan paused at the edge of the set, her back to Oprah. "Yes, it does," she said without turning around. "Because some conversations aren't meant to be had, and some truths aren't meant to be questioned." "Every truth is meant to be questioned," Oprah replied. "That's what makes it truth." But Meghan was already walking away, leaving Oprah alone on the set with cameras still rolling in a studio full of people who had just witnessed something unprecedented. As the sound of her footsteps faded, Oprah looked directly into the camera with an expression that was equal parts sadness and determination. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "the most important conversations are the ones that end before they're finished." The confrontation that was supposed to be a heartfelt interview had become something else entirely. A clash between two powerful women with very different ideas about truth, accountability, and the responsibility that comes with influence. And as the studio lights dimmed and the cameras finally stopped rolling, everyone present knew they had witnessed something that would be talked about for years to come. What do you think really happened in that studio? Was Oprah right to push for accountability, or did she go too far? Let me know in the comments below.